just to get back real quick to this whole notion of ambition, I mean, I agree with you about that we're sort of in this hangover. I mean, Mark Andreessen says it's sort of the internet generation's Vietnam. I mean, one company goes public and everyone says it's a bubble and just loses their mind. But one thing that seems to have come back is this land grab mentality, is this first mover advantage mentality, where you see, if you think about how Yelp rolled out, it was a business that was going to take multiple small network effects, and it did it in a very different way than, say, Webvan did. It was, let's prove it in San Francisco and be small. Now you have, companies like Uber that are already expanding in Europe. I mean, there's this whole obsession with, oh my God, the Salmers have cloned me, I've got to go to Germany now, versus, focusing. And I think Groupon was the first startup I had ever seen that went so aggressively internationally so quickly and didn't particularly go well for them. I'm curious what you think of the first mover advantage of that land grab mentality in entrepreneurship, and if culturally, how that ties into what we talked about ambition and sort of starting small, because it definitely seems back in some way.
Well, I think the valuable tech companies are not the first movers or the second movers, they're the last movers. Microsoft is a valuable company because it has the last operating system, and Google's valuable if it's the last search engine, and you can sort of think of various other companies in different categories.
Say Facebook.
Can't speak about Facebook, but various companies are valuable if they're the last in their category. And if you look at and this is always, the intuition is always that the value gets created very, very quickly. But the reality is that most of it gets captured over many decades. We did this sort of exercise at PayPal back in March of 2001. And I was sort of looking, it was sort of a financial modeling exercise and we've been in business for 27 months at that time. And we looked at sort of you had a high growth rate was like 100%. You looked at discounted cash flows, you used a high 30% discount rate. It turned out that about 80% of the value of the business was in years 2011 and beyond. We'd only been in business for 2 years, and most of the value was in the 2010s and beyond. And I would submit that most of the tech companies that are valuable today, most of the value is very far in the future. And so the question is, are they building a permanent franchise that's going to have real lasting duration, or are they going to be superseded or something like that? Now, there are certain contexts where maybe the first sometimes are last, and so it's important to be first because that's the only chance you have for being last. So if you come up with a fairly straightforward new model, which can be easily cloned, then other people can copy it really quickly. And so the only way to actually get to be the last mover is to be the really fast first mover and somehow take over the world really, really quickly at an accelerated pace. My preferred way to go about it would be to try to start businesses that the Samwer brothers cannot clone. And so I would say sort of another test would be, yes, we can sort of take over the world incredibly quickly before we can prove the business model. To some extent, PayPal felt like we had to do that. The argument I always had for why we had to burn all the money through in 99, 2000 was email and money was a basic idea. Linking money and email was straightforward enough. People could copy us. We had to simply take over the whole world before anyone could catch up and before we could even figure out whether there was a business model. So we had the sort of the extreme version we articulated in 99 was we had a choice. We could either prove we had a business model or we could take over the world, but we didn't have time to do both. So we had to first take over the world and then later on figure out if we had a business.
Did you make the right choice?
I think it worked. I think in retrospect, we didn't have to burn through as much money as we did because there was definitely a unique technological advantage with the anti-fraud stuff that Max built and some of the other systems we built around that. And I think also one thing that was actually easier in 99 than today was the internet was much smaller. There were far fewer people on it. So taking over the world, it was like getting to a few million users was like you had a significant percentage share of the early adopters, and you were well positioned to take over the world, whereas the world's become a much bigger place.
Right.
So that's actually, it's become sort of a harder thing to take over, and that's why I think I'm still somewhat nervous about those as business models today. I focus much more on the question, why can't it be cloned? And there definitely are a number of businesses in Silicon Valley that have not been cloned by the Samwer brothers, and I think those are systematically ones that are worth valuing more highly than ones that can easily be cloned.